Oh, man. Hello, world. What is up? Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Matt Forte. We are here live once again at the Build Studio in New York City. Jeopardy, the greatest of all time, is an epic television event that brings together the three highest money winners in the show's history to compete in a series of matches. The first to win three receives $1 million and the title of the greatest of all time. The high stakes, people. It all kicks off tomorrow night, 8 p.m. on ABC Primetime. Joining me now in just a second, one holds the record for longest winning streak ever with 74 wins, and the other is the highest earning contestant of all time with at least $4.8 million to his name. Jeopardy royalty, people. My friends, Ken Jennings and Brad Rutter are here. How about that? Come on, you excited? They're excited. So you better be. Right here. Now, here's the deal. We're going to get started in just a second, but first, I believe we have a quick peek at the show, so let's go ahead, run that clip.
Jeopardy, the greatest of all time. The epic showdown begins.
Ladies and gentlemen, make some noise. Brad Rutter and Ken Jennings, right here.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, very cool to have you here. Thank you for joining us. Congratulations on being very smart and wealthy. That's the American dream.
It's really its own reward to be smart and wealthy. You don't have to congratulate us, but we appreciate it.
I imagine it feels pretty good.
It's not bad.
Yeah, well, I was saying to my friend Kate earlier that you guys have figured it out. The answering questions side of our business, far more lucrative than the asking side. I will tell you that. You have cracked the code. But sincerely, congratulations, and I'm so excited to have you here. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited to talk about this. How are you guys doing? Are you doing a ton of press? I saw you were on GMA. You were all over the place. Is this a weird part of the process to have to go around and talk about it? How are you guys doing?
A little bit, especially because we both got in from the West Coast last night. So we started going at 3 a.m. our time this morning. So yeah, it's fun though. It's part of the gig and nice to talk about Jeopardy. I never get sick of it.
Because we're fans of the show. Like pretty much every contestant you see on that show every night is a huge fan of Jeopardy, and Brad and I are no exception. And when these big tournaments come around, like it seems like America is just as excited about our favorite show as we are, and that's very special.
That's got to be a good feeling. Talk to me about the difference here, the preparation. How do things change going into a tournament like this? I mean, first of all, you know who you're up against. So how does that change your headspace walking into this?
Well, you can scout, actually. Like you said, you know who you're going up against. So I actually went to see James play in person. Did you really? I did. That's one of the benefits of living in L.A. is I kind of have Jeopardy set privileges, which is very nice.
I was going to say, when you get to your point, you just call up and go, I'm going to drop by today.
Yeah, pretty much.
And they go, your seat will be ready for you, Mr. Rutter.
I'm a little more polite about it than that because I don't want to abuse the privilege. But yeah, so it's cool. So I got to see him play live and learned a few things about how he played. And then Ken and I know each other, going back a long way. So there wasn't much new to discover there, but, sort of thinking about how the three styles might mesh. And even though I don't think the styles are really that different. Yeah.
What do you remember the first time you met James? Was he made aware of your presence in the room where they were like, James, I don't want to freak you out. But like Ken, did you go see James as well?
I had to watch tape.
Okay.
I'm like an offensive coordinator at home, like putting X's and O's on my TV.
Yeah, I'm the director of, and I'm the director of pro scouting, so I actually go see the guys on the road. I don't think he knew I was there till the after party, but I'm not 100% sure about that.
You both, like you said, you go back a ways. You faced off multiple times. Brad, I was talking about this earlier. You are undefeated by a human, as far as we know, which is a very cool thing to be able to say about somebody. Undefeated by a human. Ken, what does that do to your preparation coming into this, knowing you've come against Brad before?
I mean, I feel really good about my Jeopardy resume because, I make it to the finals of these tournaments all the time, but unfortunately, Brad does too. And then what happens, which is not so funny, is that he wins. And, and I always feel like somebody, another Jeopardy player said, hey, Ken, you're often a bridesmaid, never a Brad. And I thought, that's a little mean. But it's absolutely true. So I already know there's one person in the finals that I have a very hard time playing against. And then there's this new kid who has this incredibly dominant strategy that just demoralizes his opponents before the first commercial break. And I'm like, what is this game even going to be like? This is going to be nuts.
It's never, Brad. That's pretty funny. One of the things James said, that's rattling around up there. One of the things James said in an interview I was reading is that the joy of having 3 champions is you guys can trash talk and you're not punching down, which I thought was very funny. And then I also started thinking...
That's very James.
I was going to say, is he trash talking? Because presumably you guys have filmed most of, if not all of this. That's how Jeopardy works. That's no secret. It films a couple months, then we got to wait and we see it happen. So without revealing anything, do you guys trash talk over that little glass wall? Does that happen during the show?
There's a little bit of that, yeah.
Not usually.
Frasier? What does that sound like? How do you guys trash talk in the middle of a Jeopardy game?
You know, it's hard to remember. You're so in the moment, and the adrenaline is going that I might have said something about somebody's mama.
Jeopardy's not usually a chatty game, but even though the stakes are very high, the 3 of us have done it enough that we're pretty relaxed out there, you know? So somebody with one of those NFL Films microphones could probably pick up us saying some crazy stuff out there. The most players are just kind of too deer in the headlights to...
Is that true, that you're even at a point where you're in a tournament where $1 million is at stake, you're still pretty lackadaisical about it? You're pretty relaxed at this point? Like,
that's one of the weirdest things is that as the stakes get higher, at least I've found, like the pressure gets lower. And I think it's mostly due to just having been there a ton. You know, I don't think anybody has played Jeopardy more than Ken, James, and I. And if not, there's maybe one other person. So... yeah, it's just you're so comfortable being behind that podium on that stage that it's a lot easier to go and have fun with it.
It comes with a lot of good memories, you know?
Yeah.
Like, playing the game is so much fun. Like, win or lose, and I've lost to this guy plenty of times, it's so much fun out there that you have all these good memories associated with it. And you walk out there and you smell that kind of dusty soundstage smell, and you're like, yeah, Jeopardy! Like, I love this game. Yeah. And I still feel that every time I'm out there.
Do you guys still, there's always been in the past much talk of homemade practice buzzers. Is that still a part of the preparation? Do you have did they give you a buzzer at a certain point?
They give you a very buzzer-like pen at the audition.
Yeah.
Which I've heard a lot of people use.
It's just got a clicky end. Yeah.
But it has a little, sort of red clicky thing at the end, which is somewhat buzzer-like. But I never did that myself, though.
No, so buzzer technique wasn't a big concern of yours.
I would always just show up and it works.
Yeah.
So why mess with it?
My theory is if you've been watching the game forever, you know Alex's voice so well. You know that cadence because he's a very consistent reader. Yes. You know how the syllables are going to line up when the clue appears, and everything about buzzer timing is built on Alex's voice. So if you're just locked into that, you're like Daredevil. Even if you can't see, you know exactly where that buzz should be. And I think it's just maybe second nature for me and Brad.
Yeah, and if there are lights that come on each side of the stage, but at this level, if you're waiting for those lights, you're not going to get it.
Like against Brad and James, the lights hardly come on. Like they're so fast that the lights are like whoop, because it's just a thousandth of a second and somebody is in.
Yeah, occasionally, so there's lights on the side of the stage and then there's lights on the podium for when you ring in. I've never seen more times of the lights just not coming on the side of the stage, just on somebody's podium as I did in this. So they're going to have to change the buzzers after we got through with them.
It's amazing. You talk about being fans of the show and all these different little things. One of the things I always loved, and I always wanted to ask you, Ken, is like the mid-game, let's meet the contestants. You've obviously provided a weird, obscure fact beforehand for Alex to read off the card. Ken, how many episodes in were you just like, I don't have anything else, guys. There's nothing else I can tell you. You know everything there is to know.
I feel like I was out of stories on day one. They tape 5 shows in an afternoon. They do a full week in an afternoon. So like by the end of the first day of taping, I had used up maybe 3 decent cocktail party stories, and I was just out. And at that point, what do? You can lie to Alex Trebek. Like he's not a policeman or a mandatory reporter. Like, you can just write down, I like airline food, and Alex will be like, now Ken, it says here something kind of crazy that you like airline food, and I'll be like, I know, Alex, but nobody fact checks it. So that's my tip if you're on 74 times. Don't be like I'm the Lindbergh baby, but.
It's got to be plausible.
Low stakes, yeah.
Low stakes. Would that be? Do you have like, as fans, do you have like favorite Trebek isms or thing? You can't talk about the show without talking about the man himself.
Oh, my favorite is definitely, ooh, sorry.
Sorry. I love the mild Canadian accent that only comes out on certain words. Sorry.
Once in a while. I always love when he's disappointed with the performance of the previous day's guests, because they're filming it back, right? So as a home viewer, you watch it day after day. So for us, it's not back to back. I've waited a whole 24 hours. Alex is still angry that they only won by $1,000, and I'd be like, hopefully we have a better game tonight. And it's just like
I love disappointed, borderline angry Alex. Like the more of that, the better, right?
Exactly. That's my favorite part. All right, so let me ask you this: you're not nervous? I was reading somewhere $1 million to the winner, $250,000 to the loser.
Show up.
Nice work if you can get it.
Exactly.
And the contract I saw said that there are no alternates for this. If you don't show up, you just get the third place prize. And for a moment, I was like, if I don't show up, I can just stay home and they'll send me a 6-figure check.
Yeah, what?
Like, they'll be pissed, but on the other hand, 6-figure check, you know?
I think you just got somebody fired.
I just couldn't believe it. I was like, man, what a game. That is incredible.
It's good work if you can get it.
It isn't bad at all. What's your, everybody's got like their wheelhouse, their category. They see it come up on the board, they get excited. I can sweep that. What's your comfort zone? We'll start, Robert.
I've had quite a bit of luck over the years, and especially against this guy. And in the
all skill.
in the finals of the All-Star tournament back in February, I got a big daily double in the category of Colonial America, which if I had to pick a category for a big daily double to be in, I would have been like, Colonial America. So that's early American history. That's great. I'm not so great at ballet. I'm more of a tap and jazz guy.
I love what an upstanding citizen you are, that Colonial America is your go-to.
That's the comfort. That's the sweet. Mine was like Disney movies, I think, was mine.
Oh, yeah.
Clean it up every time. Colonial America, a little rusty.
Yeah, I would rather see 80s pro wrestling than Colonial America for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
What have you found is your proper like sweet spot for you?
Books and movies. Movies for sure. Huge movie nerd. But I know Brad knows his movie's cold as well, so no advantage there. But I'll always go to a movie category or a wordplay category.
Yeah.
Like I was always a kid doing the crossword, doing the junior jumble with Dad.
Yeah.
So I like a good anagram category, something like that.
And that's the thing too, is especially knowing who the contestants were going to be, is your strong categories might be their strong categories too, so it's a wash. Like earlier today, James was saying, you know what, I was hoping for a hockey category, but since Brad was there, it probably wouldn't have made a difference.
Wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah.
It's so amazing. Did they, I believe they have to up the ante on the difficulty of questions at this point, right? Like, are they, they're trying to stump you guys. They want to challenge you.
Yeah, the writers want to show off.
Yeah,
I think they have a set of hard questions, but it's like they got to break the glass and open the safe, and then
There's two keys that have to be turned simultaneously.
They've got tongs, and they pull out the smoking hard clues,
They swap out the double Jeopardy questions if you guys are doing too well.
And they've got kind of fun, they're harder, but they've also got fun, creative gimmicks, very elaborate structures and high concepts. The fans love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I distinctly remember a few times with the other two guys being like, wow, how did they know that? Which doesn't happen on a usual Jeopardy game too much.
Yeah, have you ever surprised yourself? You're like, oh yeah, that's right, I know that.
Oh yeah. I've had times where I watch the show after being on the show, and I get something that I don't know while I'm watching it. Like, where did that come from?
So you knew it hey, if I'm following this, in the moment you were on it, you knew it then, now you're watching it, you don't know it?
I don't know it, and I have no memory of having known it at the time.
And when TV Ken gets it right, you're like, good job. I don't know how it's weird. Like something about like your memory is just so attuned by being in that situation. Your adrenaline's pumping.
Well, there's got to be something to your memory that you guys have retained all of this information that I think a lot of people, the assumption is that now that this is like how you've, made your money, that you just go and read encyclopedias and just study and consume. But I don't think that's the case. You don't spend your whole life consuming and memorizing facts at this point. It's years of just being curious, I would assume.
Absolutely, yeah. The canon of Jeopardy knowledge is so broad that you couldn't possibly set about learning it and actually do that. You just have to be interested in things, like to read and acquire information other ways. And then I think your brain really does have to be wired a certain way for it to stick in there. And I think that's probably just a natural thing.
But I think you can get better at it.
Yeah, I think that's true.
I mean, a lot of times the secret is just interest. People think they have a bad memory, and yet they have no problem remembering every word off their favorite album or every stat of their favorite athlete. You know, like the neurons are working fine. You just have to, like, it's a matter of focus. Yeah. Like, if you could trick yourself into thinking that ballet is as interesting as your football team, you know, then you're going to know all the ballet names just as well as you know the
Is that a superpower that you've like honed? Have you learned to trick yourself into being interested in other things?
Yeah, like you try to relate it to something you know, so you're not learning things in a vacuum. You know, if you hear an anecdote about a subject you don't know about, try to place it in time or context, connect it to something you already know about or a place you've been. I mean, we all have a filing system, and it's just a matter of activating it, I think.
What is the weirdest, most obscure fact you've got filed away that you always hope comes up, but there's never a segue to it? Like, oh, I'm going to remember that, and you haven't been able to bring it up, but you're dying to tell people this weird thing. You know, geckos have like 17 feelings in their little toes. There's just some weird. There's like, oh, that's weird. I'm going to remember that. Hasn't come up.
Well, today I learned, this is the only thing I can think of, is that you know who the Adrian Cronauer, who was played by Robin Williams in Good Morning Vietnam, you know who replaced him when he rotated out of Vietnam? Pat Sajak.
Really?
Yeah. And he even signed on with Good Morning Vietnam.
No way. That's a fun little fact.
Yeah, so now you know.
Oh, now see, I can't unknow that.
Yeah.
All right. Ken, do you have anything like a weird, obscure
This doesn't have much. It's never come in handy in real life for me, but apparently koala fingerprints are almost indistinguishable from human ones.
There you go. That's what I'm looking for.
If you're like a koala criminal, or a human criminal looking to frame a koala,
Even better.
like these are, you know, this could really come in handy.
How has that not ended up on like an episode of CSI already, where they're like,
Give it time.
yeah, it's out in the universe.
These
now.
real shows will use every fact under a Snapple cap at some point.
It has to happen. We're going to go in a minute over to some audience questions, but one of the things I had to ask you guys about, because it's a very unique, specific experience, you both have competed against Watson. You competed against AI, against a robot.
Well, competed is a strong word.
We got our asses kicked simultaneously by the same AI. Yeah.
It's wild, but what was that like? I mean, what a crazy experience.
It's very erotic, actually.
What's going on under that podium?
Ken is into humiliation and masochism.
Yeah, my kink is being defeated by robots on game shows.
That's a pretty harmless kink. If you've been on the internet, you can see that's not that bad. But
It was very exciting in all seriousness because it felt like the future was arriving and you were watching a computer do something it had never been able to do. So it's science fiction, but on the other hand, it's humiliating. Like you feel kind of obsolete, right? Like your skill has just been taken away by a new assembly line robot.
Yeah, and you know, it sort of knew how to play the game even better than we did. Which and I mean, the buzzer is always, you know, dispositive in 90% of Jeopardy games, and that was Watson's biggest advantage. But it was bouncing around the board, hunting for daily doubles, betting weird amounts that might mess with us if we had to do the math. So in fact, Watson kind of maybe kicked off the whole like Moneyball era of Jeopardy that we seem to be in now.
James Holzhauer is just Watson with a better haircut.
Yes.
Basically. A slightly better haircut.
that T-shirt. That's exactly. Yeah, but did it impact at all or influence the way you guys approach the game coming out of that? Where you're like,
oh, absolutely. Yeah, I was like, well, why haven't I been hunting for daily doubles? Why do you have to play the categories in order just because everybody else does? You know, that was the first thing that got me thinking about it. So the next time I was back on the show, I started bouncing around looking for the daily doubles.
Yeah. The last thing that I was curious about, and we mentioned a little bit of this, the perks of being, I can call up and I can go politely, they'll let me, I'll go watch a show or something like that. But I imagine, you know, when you reach the level of success you guys have had on this show, you have a different relationship with Trebek than I think a majority of the contestants that are there for a couple of nights and never come back again. Is that true? Have you guys stayed in touch with him over the years? Do you talk with him more frequently than you anticipated coming out of the show? What kind of relationship do you guys get to have with Alex, being some of the best players of all time?
Well, unfortunately, the answer is not that much of one because of federal law.
Wait, what?
Because, you know, he has...
Have you not heard of the Alex Trebek law?
Because, well, quiz shows are very heavily regulated since the scandals, and since he sees all the answers, he's really only allowed to interact with you on stage. So, I mean...
You never see Trebek till he comes out at the top of the show.
Right.
He's kept in a whole separate enclosure.
Hermetically sealed,
Yeah, exactly.
just preserving him.
So, other than what you see on stage with the chat after the game, and if I'm in the audience, he'll point me out and we'll have a couple words. That's really about the extent that it's allowed to be. But weirdly, even though I don't know him that well, I've known him for 20 years, and he's been present at the most important events in my life. So he kind of feels like my uncle at the same time.
He's like a rabbi or something.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild.
I feel like he, like I've had a few chances to kind of see under the hood a bit, and he's always just a delight. Like he's much more fun than you think based on TV.
Absolutely.
Like on TV, he comes off as very sober and even maybe a little self-satisfied. He's always correcting people. And in person, he's always joking and doing little accents, and he's very funny with the crowd. One time I was at some kind of game show event where they had me play against Charo at Charo Trivia. And I defeated Charo at Trivia About Charo, and Trebek was there. And afterwards, he came up to me and he was like, "They made you do that Charo thing, huh?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, it was disappointed Alex for sure. Like you
The uncle down.
yeah, exactly. You could tell that did not accord with his idea of good game show behavior.
So, I mean, that all makes sense. I never really connected the dots that, yes, he is the host of the show that you guys compete on, so that would make sense for there to be some boundaries there. But I remember years ago, he had done this long, extended interview on a podcast, the Nerdist podcast, where you really get to see that side of him, like the uncle side, just like the truly sincere, probably because he's Canadian, but there's just so much, just a lovely dude, and it's just like, it's cool you don't get to see as much of that when he's just, Jeopardy Trebek.
Yeah, and we've been lucky enough to be on the show enough that we get to see glimpses of that too.
And America's been seeing it lately too. With his diagnosis, he's been so brave and kind of open about the struggles he's facing, and what he wants to achieve. That we really admire him, and people have he's gotten hundreds of thousands of cards. Like he told me he's lucky enough to have lived to hear the nice things people say about you. When you go, usually people don't get to hear that, and he got to hear it, and that's great.
Well, it's tomorrow night. It all kicks off. We don't know how long it's going to last. It's whoever gets to 3 wins first. Is that right? It's like a World Series.
Could be up to 7 if, like the World Series.
Yeah.
So they're even doing the Game 5 if necessary kind of thing in the TV guide, which I love.
That's amazing. 8 p.m. For those that regularly watch, you'll notice the time shift. This is a huge deal. 8 p.m. ABC. It all starts tomorrow night. All right, before we get out of here, we got a couple of questions in the room. We've got a microphone out there. Let's do the first one right here.
Hey, guys, thank you for coming here today. I just want to ask Ken some Charo trivia. I have a few questions. No, I'm just kidding. I actually have a lifelong Jeopardy fan here. Very excited to see this. And I have 2 quick fan questions from my mom, who is watching right now live on the couch in Vermont. I want to ask you guys, how do you stay fresh when you're doing 5 shows in a day? And also, who would you pick to play you in the Jeopardy movie? I would say Tom Hanks and some other guy. What do you think? Sam Rockwell.
Actually,
Sam Rockwell.
That's not bad.
not bad at all.
When Watson was going on, unfortunately, SNL was on hiatus at the time, and I was hoping Bill Hader would play me.
That would have been great.
Yeah.
I can see it. People used to tell me I looked like either Dave Foley from News Radio or one of the Rice Krispies.
It's Crackle.
Elves.
Crackle. That's it.
So
can see it.
It would have to be one of those two. Playing 5 a day is pretty rough.
Yeah, and actually, that's the thing I was always most impressed about with your run was just doing that 2 days a week for weeks on end. That was one thing I got lucky with was I was originally on in the 5-time limit days, so I did all my first 5 in one day, and at the end of the day, I was just wiped. But I think the adrenaline kind of keeps you going through.
They do it in 2-day chunks. So the Friday show, you're not so fresh, and then the second day. So to the viewer, every other week, if you can arrange to be on for longer than a week, that's the second day, and you haven't really slept well. I guess, I don't know what the tip is. Wear comfortable shoes, because otherwise your feet hurt at the podium. Like, you don't think of Jeopardy as a physical challenge, but it kind of is.
And a light lunch, like a salad.
Yes.
Nothing
Everybody goes
heavy.
to the commissary and fills up. Don't get the burger.
Yeah.
Get a chicken Caesar.
Very good advice. Thank you.
Are those things you guys learned through your experience, or you kind of knew going in?
You know, the salad thing, I think I intuitively knew going in, but it has always worked.
Beautiful. Hey, great questions, man. The next one, go for it.
Now, at this point, you have both answered literally thousands of trivia questions correctly, both on the show and off, but you've also missed plenty in your lives. Are there any misses that haunt you?
Everybody remembers the Jeopardy question they get wrong, the clue they get wrong. I remember reading a John McCain obituary where I guess till the end of his life, he was so mad. What is Ecuador? Because he was a contestant on the Fleming-era Jeopardy before he was John McCain, and he missed the... So it doesn't matter who you are or what you accomplish, you're still going to be like, what is Ecuador? What was I thinking?
It'll haunt you.
I'm trying to think what the most embarrassing thing I screwed up was.
Well, I can think of mine. So go ahead and
no,
think
go
on that.
Yeah, go nuts.
There was one tournament where fortunately I had a huge lead, and it was a daily double, and it was SMU hosts this man's presidential library, and I was like, oh, George H.W. Bush, and no, it was George W. Bush, and it turns out that Tom Cubbage, the guy I was playing against, was an SMU grad, and he quite condescendingly tapped his class ring.
Wow,
But
power move.
That wasn't that far off, so it wasn't too bad. But if I had given that a bit of thought, I probably would have come up with it.
I feel like I get mad even about the ones that I get beat to, you know? And when you're playing somebody like Brad and James, you get beat all the time. Yeah.
I was mad when you beat me to aglets this past time.
And I texted my son. I was like, there was a question about, I can't remember, it was probably in the practice game. It was like, there was a Seahawks question, and I didn't get it, you know? And I was so mad. So, you know, it just goes to show OCD is real, you know?
How many practice games do you guys do? You said it was in the practice game.
You get like a full game of Jeopardy, right?
Yeah, although usually if it's a tournament with a field, you might get, they have to rotate 15
They
people.
cycle people.
So you might get maybe half of a single Jeopardy or a double Jeopardy.
They get more practice now, and it's my fault. The orientation used to be quite a bit shorter, and they realized what an unfair advantage a long-running champion has, because I was the first one to abuse the privilege after they changed the rule. And so that summer, they started giving the challengers a longer and more game-like warm-up, just so they could have more of a fighting chance. And it worked. The games got much closer, which is the right way to do it.
Very cool. All right, we've got time for one more question. Let's go for it. You've got a microphone.
Wow, this is the Jeopardy watching the last 20 years right in front of me. Thank you so much, gentlemen. I still think about Albright versus Rice for what it's worth.
Yeah, me too. That's one I got wrong.
Yeah.
Not a lot of decisions you make in your life are $1 million difference, but mistaking Madeleine Albright and Condoleezza Rice cost me a 7-figure check.
Just quickly, like, what's it like to represent the pinnacle of trivia show culture and something as iconic as Jeopardy?
That's kind of the beauty of Jeopardy, is it's really the most legitimate, beloved manifestation of trivia in our culture.
Yeah.
And learning in cultural literacy in general. Mm-hmm. You know, which is good if you're a trivia buff, that there is this place where once every weekday, America comes together and loves trivia.
Yeah, and one place where the computers haven't replaced us yet.
Well,
Yeah.
they did, but only for like
right.
2 or 3
That
days.
was contractually limited.
So it's a great honor, because it's our favorite show. Like, anybody on that show grew up watching it. Brad and I love it, and it's still an honor.
In the same way that, like, the world's strongest man can't go anywhere without people, like, picking a fight. As you guys being, like, the trivia kings, do people go, I'll stump you. I got a question. Like, do people come up to you all the time and try to...
Oh, yeah, you know, the wittiest boulevardiers around are always like, hey, I got a question for you. I can stump you. What's my Aunt Janet's middle name?
And you're like, Patrice. And they're like...
Yeah, and
How did he know?
And then they drop dead of a heart attack right there.
I was on a radio show once, and the caller was like, there was this place on 126th Street where my mom used to buy shoes, and I'm like, okay, what was it called? Ma'am, that's not how trivia works.
But if you come correct with it, and you're actually asking about something interesting, and I don't know it, I will actually very much appreciate the stumping and the attempt to do so.
It does happen all the time. It happened to James Holzhauer this morning. Like,
yes.
Some random person was like, I got one for you, you know?
Yeah.
There's never a moment's rest.
Everyone's always got something. Well, gentlemen, sincerely, congratulations, and thank you so much for hanging out with us and telling us all about this. We can't wait. Tomorrow night, 8 p.m. on ABC, Jeopardy, the greatest of all time, kicks off, and we're going to see once and for all who's the greatest of all time. Thank you, everybody, for being here. You were a great audience. Keep it going. Make some noise. Ken Jennings, Brad Rutter. Come on. Louder.